Hello, everyone. Oh, nice. Can everyone hear me? Can I have some enthusiasm? Can everyone hear me? Wonderful. Excellent. Welcome to PostDoc Appreciation Week. Wow, that was far more enthusiasm than I was expecting on a Monday. Excellent. Are we all enjoying all the freshers being back? Yeah. It's just fun having to weave in and out of them and look at them all confused, wandering about. It's great. So this week is all about celebrating the amazing achievements of postdocs. Give me a cheer for your postdoc. Oh, it hasn't been beaten out of you. Wonderful. Okay, and also to thank you for all the hard work that you put into keeping the university such a successful institution and a brilliant place to work and learn. So thank you. Yes, give yourselves a round of applause. Well done. My name is Luke Chaplin. I have the great honour of being invited here to help host the talks and introduce everyone as we go along, which I will try to do as expediently as possible. So we have a number of talks for you today from people across the university, all different departments, and from a range of different career stages that they're at. And then after we finish here around 2 o'clock, we've also got some stuff outside for you. There's refreshments, there's some live music, and there's also a combined arts and science display for you to have a look at. So that should be fun as well, so stick around for that. So we'll be kicking off our talks today with a few words from Dame Nancy Rothwell, who would like to be here today, but unfortunately is travelling, so can't attend. But Dame Nancy has instead shared her thoughts with this video. Fortunately, videos and multimedia, it always goes right first time, so have we got that?
The University of Manchester has over 2,000 postdoctoral researchers, and they're all incredibly important in contributing to research and discovery at this university. Of course, I was a postdoc once for quite a number of years, and it was a very important transition period in my career when I started to learn to manage my own projects, to advise others, to find my own direction in research, and also to become an independent researcher. I've probably trained over 30 postdoctoral researchers. Everyone is different. They've all gone into different careers, but that time as a postdoc was important to me as well as to them. Universities at the moment feel a bit like they're in the middle of some uncertainty with a lot of change going on around us. But we're just developing our strategic plan for the next 5 years. And two things that remain at the heart of it are our people, you, and research and discovery. I'm delighted that a group of postdocs has come together for this initiative to appreciate our postdoctoral researchers. I think it's a great initiative. I do wish you all the best with this and want to say thank you to all the postdocs for everything you do for us as a university. Thank you.
Well, that went smoothly. Nice. We are officially started. Excellent. I should probably quickly tell you a little bit about me. My name is Luke. I'm a PhD student. I work over in imaging sciences, and holding a clipboard makes me feel more organised and important than I actually am. So I will introduce our first live speaker of the day. So our first speaker will be Dr. Jack Rivers-Orty. Jack is a science communicator and research fellow in the Faculty of Biology, Medicine and Health. As a science communicator, Jack shares science in a relatable way to the public. Interesting facts, such as, unless he has just pooped, Jack contains more bacterial cells than human cells. I assume that's not unique to Jack, but I'm not 100% sure. So Jack is going to talk to us about the good and bad decisions he has made through his career to get to where he is today. So, with applause and hearty cheers, please welcome Jack Rivers-Orty.
You're giving my slides away.
Sorry, off. Let's
gone.
Here we go, this is a good slide. Here we go. Hi everyone, my name is Jack Rivers-Ordi and I am a research fellow here at the University of Manchester for the next 9 days. I have a tenure position at the University of Tasmania in Australia, which means as a New Zealander I have to come to terms with the fact that my children will be Australian. I guess there's always adoption. Maybe I don't know if I can really deal with that. So I was invited to do a talk by Enos and Amy about some of the decisions that I've made during my postdoc that have allowed me to progress through my career, some of those good decisions that I've made. But as a neuroscientist, I know that really I have no idea why I made any of the decisions that I did. My brain just tells me a random story that may be true or not, and it could all just be lies. So I've changed the title of my talk to, I can't change the slides. Hey!
Is it? Okay.
Oh, here we go. Yeah, career advice from someone who's not sure why they made any of the decisions they did. Hardback coming out later. So that's what I'm going to talk about today, just briefly, about why I have no idea why I made any of the decisions I did. And then I will actually get onto some of the decisions I made, apparently. So, to explain, here is an optical illusion. Optical illusions are so fun. A and B are actually the same color in this optical illusion. But here's the thing, your brain is a patronizing son of a bitch and is like, you know what? I will actually confuse the crap out of poor Jackie if I tell him that those two squares are the same color. Because he won't recognize that there's a shadow there, and he won't recognize that this is a chessboard. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lie to him, and I'm going to bump up the brightness on that B square to make it seem brighter than it really is, just so he doesn't get confused. Your brain is constantly lying to you in these ways. Just to prove it to you, here we go. I proved it to you. There you go, they are the same color. Here's another example of a very similar illusion. So this is a gold and white dress, but some people who are dropped as babies think that this is actually a blue and black dress. But really it depends on what your brain tells you about that dress. If your brain says that this is a dress in the shade, it's going to bump up those colors and tell you that it's yellow and white, gold and white. If it tells you that it's in bright white light and it's flushing out those colors, it will tell you that it's blue and black. To really point this out, I'll show you this great figure. So here we go. Oh, it's a bit zoomed in. But here we go. We've got a blue and black dress on the left and a yellow and a white dress on the right. But they're under different lighting settings. So that's the way we see them. What I'm going to do in Paint is I'm going to cut out that blue and black dress and drag it across. And let's just see what happens. What? It's lying to you. Your brain is lying to you continuously. But we all like to laugh about optical illusions. We're just like, ha ha ha, our brain is lying to us. That should really be concerning. We should be concerned about this, that our brain is lying to us. But the reason why we laugh is that we don't have a lot of skin in the game. Does it really matter what color these dresses are? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, I've got no skin in the game. So I'm going to just laugh about this. Ha ha, my brain lies to me. But the problem is there are other kinds of illusions. There's cognitive illusions. And this is where your brain lies to you about the decisions that you make and the things that you think. And with these ones, you've got a bit more skin in the game. It's not so funny. Now you're starting to undermine who you are as a person. A classic example of this is if I was to take you and put you in a room with rubbish, and it smells of rubbish and it's all stinky, research shows that your political ideology would shift right. You would become more right-wing if you were in a room that smelled like rubbish. And then if I was to ask you, what built your political ideology? You wouldn't say, oh, it depends on what room it smells like. You know, if it smells like rubbish, then I'll be right-wing. You wouldn't say that. Your brain would tell you the story that is built on decisions around socioeconomic status. I read Karl Marx when I was 12 or something. And that is what shaped your political ideology. But your brain just lies to you about all the decisions that you make. Let me give you the classic, and this is like the best proof experiment that your brain is in a continuous state of lying to you about your decisions that you make. Here's a brain. It's beautiful. Every organ in your body is just there to make sure that this runs, right? This is the most important thing ever. This is who you are. And you can see it's kind of divided into two. You've got a left hemisphere and a right hemisphere. And in the middle there, you can see up in that little slice, these hemispheres are connected by a highway of fibers. Now, some very unfortunate people get seizures from electrical currents going back and forth between these brains until an electrical storm happens. So what some surgeons do to solve this issue is they cut the brain in two. They separate the two hemispheres in half so that electrical storm doesn't happen. But this actually creates an interesting set of phenomenon because each half of your brain predominantly does certain functions. Here, let me give you some examples. So the left side of the brain, it controls your right arm and it sees through your right eye. But it also controls your speech. So that's your oral speech, like what I'm doing right now, but it's also your internal monologue. So if you're thinking, he looks like a right twat with those elbow patches, that's your left-hand side of the brain talking right there. Now, the right-hand side of the brain controls your left arm, and it looks through your left eye, but both sides of the brain can follow simple diagrammatic instructions. So this is where some psychologists did some great experiments. Here's what they did. To the right-hand side of the brain, they showed a whole bunch of objects. And then they showed a diagram to the right-hand side of the brain, pick up the tennis ball and hand it to the other hand. So now the left-hand side of the brain suddenly has a tennis ball in its hand. And it has no idea why it's got a tennis ball in its hand. It didn't get to see the instructions. It had no idea why it's got a tennis ball in its hand. Then the researchers asked them, because the left-hand side of the brain does the talking, why do you have a tennis ball in your hand? Now, the honest answer, if your brain was a truthful organ, it would say, I have no idea. But it lies to you. And so what the brain said to these people, and they 100% believed it, was some sort of narrative about why they picked up the tennis ball. It was, I played tennis when I was 7 years old and I just wanted to feel a tennis ball in my hand again. Or, I really like green, so it was green and I wanted to pick it up. Or, I wanted to feel the fuzz on the tennis ball. And so really, your brain is continuously doing this to you, continuously. It is lying to you. I'll say continuously, one more time. It is lying to you. And so this is why I have no idea why I made the decisions I made. My brain just tells me a story behind what decisions I made and why I made them, but I have no idea. And now that I've spent 8 out of 10 minutes undermining why I made any of the decisions and can we really learn any of them, I will actually tell you the 3 best decisions I made during my postdoc. Well, at least I think I made them. And the reasons I made them, or the reasons that I made up why I made those decisions. So the first decision I made was I quit. I didn't quit because it was hard. Everything you guys do is hard. The low-hanging fruit of knowledge have already been plucked. So to push human knowledge further, we've got to do hard things. But the important thing is that the juice is worth the squeeze. The benefit is worth the cost. And I was in a position where I could clearly see that I was going to grind my postdoctoral fellowship down in this lab for 3 years, and it was going to kill my career. I had no freedom in the lab, no mentorship. The supervisor was very stuck on his ideas, and any data that refuted them, he ignored. And I realized after 9 months of banging my head against a brick wall, I was just going to grind my career into dust. And so I quit, and I moved. And it was very hard, and it would have been much easier to just grind out those 3 years than to quit. But I chose to quit because the juice has got to be worth the squeeze. That's the number 1 rule. Okay, second is I moved. So I went to 5 different labs in 3 different cities. So I moved because every time you move, you get exposed to new ideas, new approaches, new cultures around it. And so it's fantastic for growing yourself. And particularly, it's fantastic for making yourself unique. If you stay in the same academic niche, you will grow up to be a mini-me of the leader of that niche. But there is a proviso on that. You don't have to move city, and you don't even have to move university. I think the requirement to do that is anti-family, and it's actually kind of sexist to demand this. All you have to do is move academic niche. Now, I work on the 2nd floor of the AV Hill building, and the 3rd floor has a completely different culture and approach to research than I do. So merely moving floors would allow me to grow and develop as much as moving universities. And lastly is I upskilled. So during my postdoc, I nearly killed myself by doing a postgraduate diploma in statistics, which was 400 lectures, 30 5,000-word assignments, and a dissertation. It was really, really tough, but I can tell you that I wouldn't have a tenure position today if I hadn't done it. If you all just stop and think, what is my research field going to look like in 35 years? It's going to be nothing like what it looks like now. And so you've got two choices. Do you let the field grow and you try to catch up to it, or do you upskill and try and get ahead of the curve and push that curve? And I really think that that is an important part of career development and not just do Western blocks. And so I do actually have one last piece of advice, and that's be lucky. So a huge amount of research shows that if good stuff happens, people attribute it to the decisions that they made and the skills that they have. And if bad stuff happens, they attribute it to luck. But the truth is, there's a massive proportion of luck in both outcomes, obviously. And so how do you be lucky? Well, I've got no idea. But if you are lucky, know that there's people out there that are dedicated, they're smart, they work just as hard as you, but they were unlucky. And try build bridges and ladders for those people so they can come with you in success and acknowledge and be appreciative of the luck. And so I'm sorry if I've given you all an existential crisis about whether you make any of the decisions that you actually make. But if you want to, and eventually your brain decides to come up and talk to me during the coffee break at the end of this, I will hopefully, my brain, make that decision to talk back to you. Thank you very much.
Jack Rivers-Orty, everyone. Yeah, keep going. Wonderful. Off to an excellent start. I like to immediately kick things off by making myself question everything. So that's good. To fully explain my role here today, so as a PhD student, as with all postdoc PhD student relationships, I'll just be generally slowing things down and just getting in the way while you're meant to be, concentrating on other things. So you're welcome for that. And don't be surprised if I keep asking you the same question again and again and again, or if I follow this all up with a bunch of emails, just asking you the same questions. That's perfectly normal, that's how it works. But to fully explore the PhD postdoc relationship, our next speaker is a PhD student. So B. Costa Gomez will be taking a comedic look at how postdocs influence and shape the lives of PhD students. So please put your hands together repeatedly and welcome to the stage B.
Thank you. I managed not to fall, so step number 1 done.
Good luck.
Thank you. Be lucky, first thing. Wonderful. Hi, everyone. I'm B, and as of this month, I guess as of this week, I'm a final year PhD student. Yeah, this means that roughly a year from now, I'll either be one of you guys or, committed to a mental institution. Or both. We'll see how it goes. I was asked to come here and be funny, so I'll aim for slightly amusing and just see the disappointment in your faces as if I'm meeting a panel of my supervisors. A little bit about myself. I moved from Portugal to Manchester roughly 3 years ago. Ooh, Portugal, got a woo. Oh, I'm excited. This is already great, already better than I expected. Definitely because of the weather, right? But as any new PhD student, as everyone that is arriving this week for the first time, I had reasonable expectations about what my PhD was going to be like, right? I was going to change the world. Get at least 1 Nobel Prize out of this project, and the easiest of all, get a stable and permanent job in academia as soon as I finish. Yeah. And then a couple of weeks later, reality kicks in, and this is when we realize that everything is crap. This is when you postdocs come in. You spot the depressed PhD student, you walk up to them, you tap their backs, you look into their eyes, and you say, "This is only gonna get worse." Because that's your role. That's what you do. You tell us the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. You defend the PhD students, you support us, not just work-wise, also emotionally, And I think I should add physically as well, because the postdoc was in the lab one day. I got viciously attacked by a wasp. I'm pinning this on him. But I want to tell you about the 3 main lessons that I learned with the postdocs in my life. So, okay, it works. So in the first few weeks, I have a computational background. I've never done experimental biology up until I come into this PhD. I'm at the Faculty of Biology. But I was going to do some experimental biology. I was going to go into the lab and do, get the lab coat, look all sciencey and things. And so I went, and my supervisor gave me a to-do list. And on the outside, I was like, yeah, I got you. On the inside, I understood some of the words, some of them even together. It was a whole experience, but I wanted to look like I knew what I was doing, so I said, yeah, I'll do that. One of the things involved using a very expensive microscope that I needed to book in advance. And my supervisor told me I had 8 weeks to do that, so I was like, yeah, I'm gonna look smart, I'm gonna book this very expensive microscope. I had no idea how to do it, so I went to the postdoc. And I went, hey, postdoc, so I need to book this really expensive microscope. And the postdoc looked at me like, why do you need to do that? So I showed him the to-do list, which this is actually the objectives of my first year. And so I showed him the to-do list, and he read through it and asked me, so how long do you have to do this? And I said, 8 weeks. At this point, he starts laughing. Not chuckle, not like a polite chuckle, a proper like belly laughter, like cackling at this point. And I was very confused. I was like, why are you laughing? And he said, I'll get a second opinion. He called the other postdoc. He showed the list, and he went, 8 weeks to do this. And at this point, both laugh, manically. And as a new PhD student, I was panicking at this point. That's when I learned lesson number 1. PIs live in a different reality from us common mortals, and part of your PhD is learning how to manage them. Because it turns out that this to-do list that he gave me 8 weeks to do, I would actually take 8 months. To be honest with you guys, I did nothing of that. It's still probably no one is going to do that, and this is 3 years after that, so proper managed expectations right there. So that's lesson number 1. A few months later, I went in February. The postdocs in the lab said, okay, next Thursday, 11 a.m., we want you to be here in the office. And I said, oh, sorry, I'm being a teaching assistant. First year PhD student, being a teaching assistant. I was like assisting, teaching, shaping the minds of the youths, all of that. And they were like, yeah, sure, just show up at 11. That's when we need you to be here. So, okay. On that day, on that Thursday, at 11 a.m., I had the biggest bathroom break. I was feeling terrible, so I ran from the classroom all the way to the office, and they hand me a falcon tube with a pink mushy thing inside, and they say, drink it. For those of you that don't do any wet lab, a falcon tube is something that you put things inside. Sometimes you're not even supposed to smell, let alone lick. So when they said drink it, and I trust my postdocs very much, I downed it, like instantly. That's the story of when I had a vodka shot at 11 a.m. on a Thursday. Yes. Turns out, it's called strawberry limes, it has vodka and other wonderful things inside. And that's lesson number 2. PhD stands for permanent head damage. Might as well add some liver damage to it, no one is going to notice. Because in reality, cars need fuel to continue on and to move on. And us humans, we need fuel as well. Either food, or more specifically chocolate, or caffeine, or alcohol, all of the above. Whatever makes you run, you have to do it, because otherwise how are you going to deal with lesson number 1? And this takes me to my final lesson, and the most important one. And one that is so important that I actually got it tattooed. So this is the design of my tattoo. And lesson number 3 is, if it worked, not give up. I don't have the red line. It's just the text. Third lesson is not give up. Because that's how it is, right? That's the truth. You don't give up. That's how you get your PhD. You don't get your PhD by being the smartest. You don't get your PhD by being the best. You don't get your PhD by working the hardest. You get your PhD by not giving up. So thank you, postdocs, for helping us not give up, for being there for countless hours answering our emails and questions, for the hot chocolates or vodka shots, whatever you provide, for the support, and for everything that you do. Because honestly, guys, we couldn't do any of the things that we do without you. So thank you. You guys rock. And a particular thank you to the postdocs in my life that, as always, is as excited as I am. Thank you, guys.
B. Costa Gomez, everyone. Another round of applause. That was excellent. Wonderful. Right, well, I shall do my best to kind of keep everything on time and distract as little as possible. So for a change of pace, but to keep the momentum going, I will introduce our next speaker. So Professor Claire Alexander is a professor of sociology. Today she'll be discussing her 25 years experience in the academy and reflecting on the challenges of being a woman of colour in higher education. So please welcome to the stage, Claire Alexander.
Is that working? Can you hear me? Yeah, I wanted to be really careful what I said, so I've written it down, and also the barrier is probably a good thing. Okay, so really a change of pace. I really apologise. I took this as a very serious exercise, which clearly that wasn't necessarily the right thing to do. But firstly, I do want to thank Inez and her colleagues for inviting me to speak at today's event and for starting this whole series of kind of events in Manchester. I must confess, when I first heard about this initiative, I was a little bit sceptical. Largely, I have to say, because of the acronym, which someone pointed out to me was PAW, or if you had International Postdoc Appreciation Week, IPAW, which seemed to be a whole different version of what a career might look like in the academy. But it has been really important in terms of raising my awareness and knowledge and experience of the experiences and issues facing postdocs in the university, particularly outside of my own area, my own school and faculty. So I guess, to one extent, job done, right? I'm going to start with a few disclaimers so that I can manage your expectations. So firstly, Inez asked me to come along and be inspirational or motivational. I'm not going to be able to do either of those things. In the unlikely event you go away feeling either inspired or motivated, it's entirely unintentional. I accept absolutely no responsibility for anything you might decide to do after this. I also don't offer myself as a role model or example of how to succeed in the academy. In fact, pretty much as a single childless workaholic, I'm absolutely not what you should be aiming for. So take it as a warning, maybe. Secondly, I'm aware that what I'm going to say largely comes out of experiences, or exclusively comes out of the experiences of humanities and social sciences. And so I suspect a lot of what I'm going to say doesn't apply to those of you in STEM disciplines, which I think probably is most of you, I guess, around the room. The career path for postdocs in humanities is still comparatively straightforward. It's still, I'm sure that most of the postdocs in that area don't feel this, but there is at least the assumption or the possibility that most doctoral graduates will do perhaps one or possibly two stints of the postdoc on some kind of temporary lectureship before moving on to a permanent post. And I know that that's more and more difficult for people coming out of STEM subjects. So some of this may not apply. The third disclaimer is I'm not going to spend my time bemoaning the state of the academy and the structures that constrain us. Let's take for granted that we all recognise the downsides of a neoliberal university and also the pressures that the university sector is under. I'm sure we would all like our universities and our workplace and conditions to be better, though I suspect we may not all want them to be better in the same way. So let's set aside the structural issues as something that we can't do that much about at this point and concentrate on agency. So on the things that we can actually do in our own lives. So I'm going to take you very briefly first through a few kind of key highlights of my career in the academy as a woman of colour, and then offer you a few practical tips, which may or may not be of any use to you whatsoever. Okay, so let's start off by stating the obvious. That academics of colour and women of colour in particular are underrepresented in the academy, and that universities have been very slow at recognising, let alone addressing, issues of inequality around gender or race or disability or sexuality, class as well. Because of this, I think it's quite hard for academics of colour to make a plan, and actually this refers back to something that was said earlier. The traditional pathways through the academy are not designed fairly obviously for those who are non-traditional. So while my career often looks from the outside as if it's been seamlessly and ruthlessly plotted, apparently I have a reputation for being ruthlessly careerist, from the inside it feels like a series of accidents. So I finished my PhD in social anthropology in Oxford in 1993. I worked then for a year on a postdoc there, which was mainly looking after kind of drunken students actually, so it wasn't even a real postdoc. I very soon discovered that I couldn't get a job in anthropology because my PhD was on Black British youth. And firstly, work at home was not considered proper anthropology. And secondly, that work on race really wasn't considered to be a proper topic for anthropology. I got a temporary post in Southampton as a lecturer, but I also applied for a British Academy postdoc, which everyone told me I wouldn't get. So one lesson I guess to take away is never listen to what people tell you can or you can't do, because you don't know. But I went to work with Stuart Hall at the Open University, where I did my project on the Asian gang. When I came out of that 3 years later, the bar for getting a job in the academy had already risen quite dramatically. I applied, I think, for over 30 jobs before I finally got a temporary lectureship, coincidentally back at Southampton. On my first day in Southampton, a professor in the department offered to help me carry my books to my office. On the way over, he told me that no one had wanted me to get the job because I was an internal candidate, and I'd only got it because the university felt they needed a black face. Oh, and wasn't I a good friend, in inverted commas, of the head of department? I left Southampton after 2 years to go to South Bank in London. When I got that job, a colleague spread the rumour that I'd got the job because I was sleeping with the head of department, and because they wanted someone black. You get a sense of the pattern here. I moved 5 years later to the LSE, taking a demotion from senior lecturer to lecturer. I was the first person to have been employed, the first person of colour to be employed on a permanent post in the sociology department ever. On my first day at a departmental meeting, the head of department thanked me and one other ethnic minority colleague who'd arrived on a fixed-term contract at the same time for, quote, bringing a bit of colour into the department. Although he was referring, actually, it turned out to what we were wearing, but I'm thinking about it afterwards, that's not actually better. Later, a so-called feminist colleague at the Gender Institute told me that I'd been appointed because the head of department liked to surround himself, quote, with younger women of colour. I was at the LSE for 9 years, was promoted to reader, but a later head of department, another so-called feminist, white feminist, told me that I would never get a chair because they didn't promote women and they didn't consider race research to be proper work. When I was a targeted appointment for a chair in Manchester, a senior, highly respected white male colleague with several decades of work in race asked me if I was sure I'd actually been offered the job and not just been asked to apply for it, because my English is clearly not very good. One of my PhD students, another white male, said to me, Manchester or Manchester Met? And then followed it up with, are you friends with the head of department there? So that's up to 7 years ago. And this resume doesn't include the very famous professor who complimented me on the quality of the writing in the art of being black and then said, you must have had a very good editor. The warden of Goldsmiths, who in a job interview asked me if The Asian Gang was a real book. Or the chair of an ethics committee here in Manchester, who quoted Kipling to me when questioning my 20 years of research experience, ending up quoting, you're a better man than I am, Gunga Din. So I'm telling you this litany of minor humiliations, not just to show that I can really, really, really bear a grudge, but mainly to show that the academy has always been a hard place for people whose face doesn't fit, and that never really goes away, even as you get a permanent post and even as you become more senior. Hopefully, though, for those of you that are finding your way in a place that either doesn't see you or doesn't like what it sees when it does see you, it does at least hopefully make you feel that you're not alone. And if it's not exactly light at the end of the tunnel, then there are at least some points of solidarity along the way. So in the spirit of which, I offer you a few tips from my own experience, which, as I said, you may or may not like and may or may not find useful. So the first thing is, do the work. So one of the things that has changed since I started out is that, although it doesn't seem like it, the academy now is much more open, more diverse and more transparent than it has ever been. Certainly in the social sciences, there are less jobs for the boys. And certainly things like Athena Swan and the Race Charter Mark have put issues of equality on the agenda. I mean, there are issues about how effective we think those have been, but there are at least questions that are being asked now. Also, and I know this is a double-edged tool, things like the REF at least provide clear benchmarks for what we're meant to be doing. So use those, know what those are, use them to meet the expectations of colleagues and employers, and then you have something to fight with. At least when you're not getting the job, you'll have a good reason to ask why, right? I think of this as covering your back. I also think there's more space than there has been for alternative kinds of work. Public engagement and impact has meant that different media, publications, activities are valued. This does allow more space for diverse voices and approaches to scholarship. So in the humanities and social sciences, the debates around decolonising the curriculum, for example, have changed the way in which we're having to think about who needs to be heard and who needs to be here. So there are ways of engaging with those expectations. You have to engage with those expectations. You have to play that game. But once you're playing the game, then you can try and kind of change it. You can't do it from outside. The second lesson I learned is apply for everything. That's what I always tell my PhD students. They always look horrified, but it really is. You have to apply for everything that's going when you're starting out. There's no job that you're too good for. In most cases, and certainly if you don't have kind of family money to fall back on, then you don't have a choice. So don't just hang around, wait to see if Manchester will offer you a job. They probably won't. And don't rule out post-92 universities because the conditions are worse or the status is poor or the job is somewhere you don't like or it has too much teaching or whatever. None of us ever start out where we want to end up. When I took the job at South Bank, I was teaching 12 hours a week, face-to-face teaching. And the line from the Dean of Faculty was if you wanted to do research and writing, you had to do it at evenings and weekends. The best career advice I ever got was to take the job that gets you nearer to where you want to be. So in this case, when I moved to South Bank, it was because I wanted a permanent post and I wanted to be back in London. Then write yourself out. Right? So take the time. And yeah, it might involve evenings and weekends, but do that. So do what you have to do, take the opportunities that come along, and have an escape plan. Thirdly, be realistic. And this is about balance. And this is, I probably shouldn't say this given that I'm the school research director, but I do think there's often too much emphasis on research and research excellence, which leads people to think that it's the only thing that matters. Often the academy, I think, seems like a really boring intellectual version of the X Factor. It isn't. Most of us are not going to change the world through our work. Most of us will never be a Foucault or a Bourdieu or a Stuart Hall or a Judith Butler. And even if we are, that doesn't really make a difference to most people outside the academy. And if most of you in the room are going, who? That kind of tells you everything you need to know. Honestly, I've been working on race equality for 25 years, and I often think I could have achieved more if I'd just learned to bake. So perhaps the most important thing that any of us will do is teach. Not just because this is where most of our wages come from. In humanities and social sciences, 80% of the money coming into those departments is from teaching. But it's also because it's where we can actually shape minds and make a difference in the world. My time at South Bank was incredibly frustrating and exhausting, but it allowed me to see the difference that we really can make to the people that we reach through teaching, and it was much more satisfying than I ever felt teaching the international elite at the LSE. Fourthly, get support. Academics' life is pretty isolating. The emphasis on individual success does generate competition and anxiety. On top of that, if your face doesn't fit, it can be a pretty difficult world to navigate. So my advice is get a group of people who you trust, who get who you are and understands the struggles that you face. This may be peers, it may be mentors, it may not be people from your own institution or your own team, it may not be formalised in any way. I've been very lucky to have benefited from the advice and opportunities given by a number of senior colleagues, mainly actually white, mainly men, across the course of my career. Now, as a senior academic, I try to do the same for younger colleagues, particularly colleagues, scholars of colour, or those whose faces, for whatever reason, don't fit. But don't try and go it alone. So in SOS, Social Sciences, we've developed a policy for research contract staff, which builds in some support for career development. This is my plug for the Social Sciences. So this policy provides mentors, it provides a £1,000 annual research support allowance for people to develop their own careers, go to conferences that are not tied to the work they're employed on. a 1 day a week research time for developing their own publications, and a network coordinator to develop training between research contract staff so they don't feel so alone, and to identify training and support needs. But there are also informal mechanisms. So take the opportunities that come up to get involved in your department or your academic field. Do things like that you can't obviously see the benefit of initially. Things like book reviews or funding reviews or journal article reviews, those kind of things. All of these help to build your profile, but also they provide kind of connections and opportunities that can be invaluable and can lead to quite surprising things. And the final point, I think this came up again in the first presentation, is try and keep your passion. And it is kind of the reverse of the first point, although it really, about doing the work, but it shouldn't be. So try and keep the passion for your work, whatever area it's in. What was the thing that brought you into the academy in the first place? It almost certainly wasn't for the money, it certainly wasn't for the job security. The modern university is very good at making us worry a lot about our careers, but less about the intellectual thing that brought us into the PhD and kept us here, so the problem or the issue that you were wanting to understand or change. And here I'm channeling my main mentor and inspiration, Stuart Hall, who was, I don't know if most of you may not have heard of him, but he was a black sociologist who was committed to understanding race, class, and identity. And he always drew a very clear distinction between being an academic, which he was slightly scathing of, with all the kind of careerist stuff that comes with that, and being an intellectual. So the focus on the issues, on the understanding, on communication, on change. He once asked colleagues, why are you in this field if you don't care about changing the world? He died a few years ago, and I went to his memorial service, and 3 things really struck me. Firstly, that he worked really hard, really hard, even when, from the outside, it looked like it all looked really easy, and he could just wander around the world being Stuart Hall. So do the work even when it's difficult or demanding or unrewarding. Secondly, that intellectual work is a privilege and a vocation, and it shouldn't just be reduced to being an individual career. It's a collective endeavour. And thirdly, that intellectual work requires generosity, empathy, care of self and of others, and in my case, lots of tea and cake. So, thanks.
Thank you very much to Claire there. That was fascinating. Claire, are you around afterwards to answer questions? Yeah. So if you've got any questions for Claire, catch her outside afterwards. She'll be around for a little bit. So I shall introduce our next speaker. Our next speaker is a lecturer in history and humanities, and it is Jesus Chiriez Garza. So speaking to Jesus, he mentioned that he still believed he had a chance of playing professional football. Is that right? Until last year. And then you immediately followed it up with, oh, but I still might have a chance.
I still might have a chance.
So I'm not sure. Yeah, there's still
one
hope
game,
there.
I think.
But Jesus is here to talk about the challenges and roles of an academic career for people who have caring responsibilities. So please give it up for Jesus.
Let me just set up my clock. Okay. I didn't know the talk before mine was going to touch on issues of race and career, and a lot of things resonate with what I'm going to say right now. And in a lot of ways, it also is going to be different. Today, I'm just going to talk about my experience. As people have already mentioned, this is just one way to do it. It's the way that I managed to do it. I didn't plan it properly. A lot of time it was my partner and I improvising of the things that we can do. And in another way, I'm here to speak about being a PhD student and being a postdoc with caring responsibilities and some of the challenges that implies, not because I'm really good at it, but because I believe that particularly men need to speak about it. We don't do it, and also because women have been doing this for a long time, and they don't get the recognition. We don't know what it is to do certain things that take a lot of time, a lot of patience, and it takes a lot of energy. In my case, my caring responsibilities are 2 kids. For other people, it might not be that way. It might be a sick relative, it might be a partner, it might be a friend. So I am just going to tell you about my own experience, but there are plenty of issues that we can discuss, and there are not better or lesser in any particular scale of society. I'm also aware that I'm talking and speaking of this as a man, a cis male man that is in a heterosexual relationship, and that takes a lot of pressure off from many of the concerns that I have. So, acknowledging that I'm talking from a place of privilege in certain ways, I also am aware of the challenges. So, first of all, the first thing is that I'm going to tell you a little bit about me, because in academia, it seems like kids, children, family, relatives, personal relationships are sometimes not recognized. We all have them in certain ways or another, but a lot of times we really don't talk about it. And why is this problematic? It is problematic because when we organize seminars, for instance, at night, a lot of the people that are postdocs, that are PhD students that have kids, they cannot go. When you go to a nice restaurant and you have the paycheck of a postdoc, or you have like a small scholarship, you probably need that money for something else. It could be nappies, it could be just to take the bus. And a lot of people, without saying it, in my case, I didn't say any of this, I excluded myself from certain situations. But why is this important? It is important not because you're only excluded from people having a nice time, but because in academia, those lunches, those dinners are never only about having a good time. They are about where people get together, they talk about conferences, they talk about proposals, they talk about certain things that you're going to be excluded. So I believe that we need to discuss that, we need to be aware for the people that are not thinking about these things, that for certain people, you need to take them into consideration. So how did I get here? Right now, I'm a lecturer in the history of race and ethnicity. Last year, I was a postdoc at the University of Leeds. I had a Leverhulme Early Career Research Funding Fellowship. And the interesting thing is that before that, and while I was doing my master's and while I was doing my undergrads, I had already a kid. What is also most interesting for me is that my wife, right now she's a postdoc, she's a British Academy fellow, and throughout all these years, from undergrads till PhD and postdocs, we've done it together. We spend a lot of time away doing research. She works in Mexico, I work in India. A lot of problems in the relationships are there that you cannot discuss a lot of times. But the main thing is that if someone like us can do it, because we're very stubborn, because we are kind of a bit crazy, that you decide that you're going to do something and try to do it, you can survive. So that's just a little bit about me. In terms of the challenges of being a student, as a PhD student, for instance, or as a master's student, I didn't talk about being a dad at all. It seems like my supervisors in academia, they didn't have any children, and that's fine. But all of the things that they were planning, they kind of exclude me in certain ways. Even when my first child was going to be born, I was in a MA program in Mexico City that had like a 2-month screening course. So after those 2 months, if you made it, you were able to stay in the MA. And the people there were so competitive, and they were so, in some ways, mindless about the needs of certain people, that they made me believe, or at least I believe, that I shouldn't tell anyone that I was going to be a father. Even the day before that my child was going to be born, I was in a different city. My wife was in Monterrey and was in Mexico City. My wife called me and tells me, Jesus, I'm going to have a C-section tomorrow because Diego he needs to be out of my body. I'm like, oh, okay, so I have an exam tomorrow, so I think I'll see you in the weekend. and at that time, I believed like that was the right thing to do. But my friends that didn't know that I was going to be a dad, they heard me speaking on the phone, they saw me kind of like depressed, and told me what's going on. I'm like, well, I'm going to be a father. My kid's going to be born tomorrow. So I just told my wife, like, we were not married, sorry. I just told my partner, like, I'll see them over the weekend. And they said, like, man, you just need to go tell the professor that you'll miss the exam. He could put it on later on. You can present it later on. And I was like, I don't think it will happen because they said like there were no exceptions, you cannot do this. And this is the official discourse that people tell you, like, no matter what, you need to take these exams. No matter what, you need to be here the whole 2 months. So I went to talk to this person, and then he said like, yeah, man, sure, like, go ahead. I'll give you the exam when you come back. So I was just so petrified about these things, about like the official discourse of academia, that I couldn't even kind of tell. I couldn't believe like I could miss one day, the day when my son was going to be born. In the end, I did like I bought like an emergency ticket. I flew back to my hometown, and I was able just to get right in time before my partner was going to get into surgery. So that ended up in a good way. But when I came to do my PhD, there were other factors involved. In Mexico, you get like a certain scholarships to be in academia to do your PhD. They're not very good. When I arrived, my scholarship was 860 pounds, and my rent was 900 pounds. And that was like with my dependents included in the money. So my wife, she also had one, but because we were married and I already had like a dependent kind of scholarship, she only got like 700 pounds. So all of these things that I'm saying, that they seem to be like quite obvious, like you might not get the money. For certain people that are not here, for certain people that are not from here, are very, very kind of excluding. They mean a lot of things. Similarly, we didn't count with, or we were not aware, like for instance, when we got pregnant, or when my wife got pregnant for the second time, she couldn't, because of the hostile environment that is here in this country. If you are an immigrant or a student, you cannot take any maternity leave or paternity leave. If you take a maternity leave, they will take your student visa away. So we managed, in some ways, to do our PhD because of that. And it was a turning point for me. When my second kid was born, on that day, in that week, I had to present a paper in front of the big kahunas of my field. I was scared. I didn't sleep much, like for 2 weeks. And I went there, I presented a paper, and I got the most and the nastiest comments I ever had. My supervisor was there. A few friends were there. They had my back. But at that point, I realized that even though my work means a lot to me, it is very important to me, it doesn't define me. When my paper was done, people were going to stay there. I was going to take my things. I was going to take my paper, rethink it, go back to my place, and realize that I had bigger fish to fry. I had a kid. I had 2 kids, actually. I had a wife. She couldn't move for a bit. And those things, at that point in time, gave me perspective that I didn't have before. Academia for me is really important. I've been successful in academia in some ways. But what I'm really proud is of my family is that my partner has been able to pursue her own career. It means sacrifices, but it also means I know who are the people that are with me. I know the things that matter for me. For some people, it might not be that way. For some people, their work might be the most important thing. I'm cool with my own decisions, and it's only the type of advice that I could offer. So, to conclude, really, because I'm running out of time, just be clear that being a postdoc is being in a very strange place. It means that you already succeeded finishing your PhD. You are kind of successful because you have a job after your PhD. But you're also in a strange place because you are not really there. You might not have a permanent position, but you're still kind of in the lower bottom of the hierarchical structure in academia. Be aware that your job doesn't define you. The success that we have here is that universities kind of put forward, it's a really strange and very minuscule understanding of how success could be defined. There are millions of other things that can be defined as success. Being successful doesn't have to be in academia. Just be aware that you need to find balance in your life. Sometimes you need just to say, my time at work is going to be an hour today. I cannot do more. And celebrate. Be aware of those successes. Be aware of those type of progress that it really means a lot. And if you want to know a little bit more about the academic career of science or writing proposal, I can also talk to you about that later on. I've been I had a good record of doing that, so I'm happy to discuss that later on. And enjoy your life, enjoy your postdoc. There are things that are not about luck. There are things that are about just being the right color, having the right connections. A lot of when you apply for things, a lot of the jobs are already set up. People know who is going to get those jobs. So just be aware that the failure in applications is not about you. Most of the times it's not about you. Most of the time it's about other things, about whether the university has an inclusion policy, whether the university needs a particular type of historian, and so forth and so on. So with that, again, I cannot tell you anything else. This is the way I've been successful. This is the way I've been trying to do it. This is the way I've been trying to survive. I'm not particularly successful, but this is the only things that I could offer to you. So thank you.
Thank you. Please give it up again for Jesus Chayes Gaza. Wonderful. Jesus, are you around for a bit afterwards? Yeah. So if you want to ask Jesus some questions, please see him after this section of the event, and you can ask him some questions and talk to him. Our next session, again, is a bit of a change of pace. We have a senior counsellor from the University of Manchester who is here to talk to us about mindfulness. Do we have Mary Walsh? Mary Walsh. This makes timing easier. It's fine, we rehearsed for this kind of thing. Because it's all in my head. So yes, we would have had 50 minutes of mindfulness. If you want, you can kind of try some breathing techniques and things while I speak now, and you can just kind of tune me out and it'll all be fine. But yes, so as we've got a little bit of time, I've introduced myself. I might as well get to know you guys a little bit. Could you give me an enthusiastic cheer if you're not a postdoc yourself, but are here to support one? Oh, nice. Very good. And give me a cheer if you are a postdoc yourself. Nice. So there's either more of you, or there's something that happens afterwards that really just crushes the enthusiasm out of you. But yes, that's wonderful. Give me a cheer if you don't think that that's an accurate way of collecting data. Very nice. You can see some of you thinking about that as like, do I? Yeah. So I'll take that as a, yeah, that doesn't work. That's fine. So our next speaker is a postdoc in sustainability science for Alliance Manchester Business School. We're going to be hearing from Dr. Julia Kazmaier. And she is also the organizer of the Women's Network.
Yes, I am.
Yeah. So for a comedic take on postdoc life, Julia, everyone!
Thank you. Yes. Oh, I need the clicker.
Yes, I hope it works.
As do I. See.
Best of luck for all of us.
Yes. I feel so responsible with a microphone and a clicker. This is brilliant. All right. Yes. Hello. I'm Dr. Julia Kazmaier, a genuine holder of a PhD, as you can see. That's me right there, holding a PhD. You know, I like a good literal interpretation. I want to thank everyone for coming today. I also want to thank the organizers for putting this on. This is a great opportunity, and it will go directly on my CV, where I will describe it as providing original community service and leadership material to a very large audience. Very large audience. And, you know, I was tempted to say that it was, you know, a Nobel Prize that I'd received. But I thought, you're only supposed to exaggerate like 5% on a CV, right? 5% is the most you're supposed to. Everyone, never mind. But really, today is about the researchers, about thanking them, about giving them an opportunity to get out of the lab, to take off the lab coat, to put down whatever that is. Do something else with people, genuine people who speak face to face. You know, postdocs don't get enough time to do all the things that they're expected to do, besides operating that thing, or whatever she's doing in white gloves. I don't know. Or this guy. What? You know what? I also want to point out there are postdocs who don't wear lab coats or white gloves. Not all postdocs wear lab coats. I mean, they're easier to spot when they do, but they don't all do it. But really, so this is an opportunity to take time, to feel good about yourselves, to give yourself a pat on the back, because no one else will. And I thought, not only is this a good opportunity today, but it could be the start of something brilliant. A whole series of, you know, opportunities to recognize our achievements. And because we don't have enough day-to-day competition, we could make it a postdoc Olympics. That's right. I mean, based on my own personal experience, I could imagine events like mental weightlifting, where you are expected to lift yourself up to unreasonable standards of achievement, while also being responsible for your own mindfulness and exuberant joy and personal growth or something. And, you know, another event might be the credibility climbing, where you're judged on how coherently and convincingly you can talk about something that doesn't exist yet. Yeah. You know, if you can fool them, then you win, essentially. And we've got the responsibility hurdles. Yeah. This is where you have to devise your own research schedule while leaping over like added responsibility and weird questions and emails at like 2 a.m. and, you know, just general jackassery from your PI. Yeah, leap right over that. Sail above it. My personal favorite, the grant proposal archery, where you have to hit a target the size of a pound coin that is somewhere over there with only vague guidance about where it is, under very strict time limits. Now, you can ask for your grant writing support team to help, but that does cut down on your time that you're allowed to have. Also, there is a certain chance that they will come back to you with responses like, our services are really only for bigger grants. Ooh, true story. Or, this one really stings a bit, we only help candidates with more potential for winning. So yeah, double-edged sword that. The ref cycle races, of course. You have to write more refable papers while changing jobs every 2 months. It's good. You can even change jobs like you're changing a bicycle midstream, halfway around. Just change. It's part of the game. This is a good one. Networking judo. This one's a very physical skill. It's about balancing a tiny plate with 2 mystery canapes and some dodgy fruit in one hand and a glass of warm, cheap, and white wine in the other. And you gotta, shake hands and, get some contact details and some business cards. You lose points if you spill anything, or if you try to swallow just as someone asks you a question. Sure. Absolutely, I know what you're talking about. Nope, lose points. The feedback marathon. Now, this is an interesting one. In this one, you have to make eye contact and smile for about 2 hours. Well, 26.1 people, don't ask me how that works. 26.1 people give you feedback on what you've written. Now, the real challenge is that over the course of that time, the feedback will become less applicable. By the end of it, it will be completely incoherent. It will be someone just ranting about the trains, or why self-checkout machines at supermarkets don't recognize your item. Don't they expect it? Why does this have to do with my paper? This is really not helpful. Feedback. Make eye contact, smile the whole time. Now, there's no competition without prizes, am I correct? But, a postdoc Olympics can't have something as straightforward as gold, silver, and bronze medals. They can't even have sawdust-filled carnival prizes. What you get if you win is a short-term contract. Yes. Get in. It's what we're all here for. Oh, yeah. And second place, a certificate printed in Comic Sans. That's right. I've got at least several of those. They're keeping my desk level. And third place, you're all going to like this, third place gets that intangible gift of reputational value. Yeah. Great. Thanks. But more importantly than just prizes, it's the taking part that counts, right? It's the participating. And if you want to participate, you will have to pay for it yourself and apply for reimbursement. All travel costs will be reimbursed, eventually. Because first you have to go to the back of the internet and find a form. And then you have to find your account codes and your project codes from some lost in an email that came once, months ago, from someone who isn't even on your project. So you have to put all that together. You have to print out the form and turn it in, because this is the digital age. And then it will be rejected at least twice because you've done something completely unreasonable, like included a receipt for some kind of frivolous nonsense like headache medicine. True story. Or because you foolishly thought that including a small gratuity on one of your receipts would be covered by your funding. No, be grateful on your own time. So, we can all recognize achievements in ourselves and each other, and I want to thank the organizers for putting this on. It's a great achievement. I want to thank all of you for coming here today. It's a great achievement. But you have done other things that are great, and you will do other things that are also probably great. I can't guarantee it. But my last piece of advice is, whenever given the opportunity, do some shameless self-promotion. Thank you very much.
Julia, everyone! Milk it. Julia would also like to urge you to join the Women's Network. You can find more information about that on the Staff Network's pages on StaffNet, so please do investigate that. I'm afraid we're now approaching the time where I introduce our final speaker. Oh, thank you. And by the way, the refreshments afterwards, we lied. They're not refreshments, we're just doing the PostDoc Olympics. That's what's happening afterwards. So get ready, get into teams. But yes, our final speaker is Professor Daniel George, MBE, who is a professor in electrical engineering, and we will all watch her try and operate the multimedia system and judge her. So Daniel has presented at the Royal Institution Michael Faraday Christmas Lecture. She did this in 2014 while 8.5 months pregnant, I think. And she's also known for other outreach work that she's done, including some BBC documentaries. And she is here today to share her experiences from her career journey and some tips she picked up along the way. Are you ready to go, or do I need to stall?
I think so. Yeah, no, I'm ready. This works. Yeah, okay, thank you.
Sorry, you didn't get a round of applause.
Yeah. No.
Danielle, everyone!
All right, thank you very much. Just so I understand who's in the room, in terms of the three faculties, who's in science and engineering? Hands up. Oh, quite a lot. Awesome. And BMH? And humanities? Marvellous. That's good. Representation program. Great. Okay, thank you very much to Lucan Innes for inviting me to talk today. They've asked me just to talk a bit about my career path and what my sort of passions are in terms of being here at the university as well. And I want to say that what Nancy was saying this morning, I think it's really great that you've done something like this, bring everyone together, especially across faculty, because I don't think we do it enough, and especially at different career stages. I don't think we do it enough, so well done you for doing this. So I'd like to just start with my career path, which wasn't really an academic path to begin with. It was what was called then as academic related. I'm not quite sure we have that term anymore, but academic related or a technical path. So I worked at Jodrell Bank Observatory. Do people know where this is? Some people, yeah. So this is owned by the university. It's out in Cheshire. It's owned by the School of Physics and Astronomy. And so I worked on, this is the big Lovell dish, 76 metres in diameter. So it's a big radio astronomy facility out there. And I worked here as a junior engineer to begin with in 1999. So that's my sort of career path there. I started doing my PhD and sort of writing up as I went along. So I didn't sort of stop doing work. I sort of had a full-time job and did a PhD at the same time, which was an interesting 3.5 years for sure. And then I became an engineer out at Jodrell Bank. And then my sort of postdoc, if you like, was out there at Jodrell Bank. And then in 2006, I went for a lectureship position in the School of Electrical and Electronic Engineering. What is the School of Engineering now? And throughout it, I always really, even when I was sort of out at Jodrell doing the sort of postdoc times, I always wanted some sort of responsibility and something different to just doing my research as well. And so when I got the lectureship position, the teaching was just amazing. It's something that I'd never done before, and it really gave me a different sort of fire in my belly, if you like. You know, just my research was brilliant, but the teaching was also amazing, and having that different challenge. So for you, those of you that don't do any teaching, I would recommend it. It's very good for your soul, I think anyway. But I also wanted to do some sort of responsibility type things. So I became the first year tutor and schools liaison as well. I thought it was really, really important, and still do, to liaise with primary schools and secondary schools and talk to a wider audience about what we do. And then I became a senior lecturer and a reader in my field. I wanted to keep that sort of schools liaison and outreach type activities going. And then again, that sort of responsibility, I wanted to do more in terms of management and leadership within the faculty. And so I did Director of Teaching and Learning and Students for my school. And then I eventually became Vice Dean for Teaching, Learning and Students, which is what I am now for the Faculty of Science and Engineering as well. So that was up to sort of 2012. So I became a reader then. And then I was a reader for a couple of years. And then in 2014, it was quite a major year for me. It was something my husband terms the 3 Ps in my years. And you must get that feeling now as well, where you're doing something, but you want to do something different. You've got a different challenge. And you still love what you're doing, but you want some sort of different challenge. Well, that was sort of happening to me, and I couldn't quite put my finger on what it was. And I was 38 at the time, and I hadn't had a family yet. So I was thinking maybe it's just I want a family, and that's the sort of challenge that I'm looking for. But I wasn't quite sure, and people at work were saying, well, maybe you should put your papers in for professor. And I was like, no, I don't think so. Like imposter syndrome, no, absolutely not. But with a lot of advice and pushing by colleagues, I put my papers in for prof. And so that became my first P. I became professor, and that was really, really good. And I felt very good. And I think what was really nice about it was it had sort of something I hadn't really appreciated, but it was a really nice thing for other females in my field. There were not many females in science and engineering, certainly not in engineering, electronic engineering. So they thought, well, that's really good, you know, and I'm sort of helping them do their papers now, which is great. And then came the second P. And this was the challenge I was waiting for, and I hadn't quite realised that I was waiting for it. But I got an email from the Royal Institution of Great Britain, and they were like, "Hi, Danielle George, would you consider presenting the Christmas lectures?" And for those of you who don't know what the Christmas lectures are, they are sort of lectures that have been put on the BBC for, well, since 1827, not continuously, and certainly not on television then, but they've been held since 1827, and it's really about communicating science and technology of all different areas to the public, and especially to children. And so I had this email, and it said, "How would you like to present the Christmas lectures?" And you know when you feel it's one of those emails like, "Would you like to have 2 million in your bank account?" Well, yeah, sure I would. Yeah, great. Delete. So I deleted it, because, you know, who would want me to present the Christmas lectures? And thankfully, a couple of weeks later, they got back in touch and were like, "Oh, hey, did you get that email?" I said, "Oh, yeah, I did. I deleted it. I thought you were joking." And they were like, "No, we'd really like you to, you know, we'd like to do sort of a technology side to it. So, you know, what would you like to pitch?" So I pitched it, and I sort of said, I'd like to turn a skyscraper in London into a game of Tetris. I'd like to talk to an astronaut on the International Space Station, and I'd like to create a robot orchestra. And they were like, "Wow, we probably can't do any of them, but we really like the way you're thinking." So I did. I presented the Christmas lectures, which was amazing. And so that was my second P. And so obviously these happen in December, and they're filmed really, really close to Christmas, only a couple of weeks before. And so they announce it over the summer. And so literally the week after they announced it, I found out I was pregnant. And I was like, yes, that's really good. My husband and I had wanted a family, so that's brilliant. And then I started doing the maths, and I was like, oh man, that's really bad. 2 amazing things have come at the same time, and now I can't do both of them. Clearly, I can't, not have a child, so I'm not going to, not do the Christmas lectures. And thankfully, it was my husband who was like, why can't you do them? Unless you're literally giving birth, why can't you do them? And I was like, oh, I don't know, actually, why can't I? And so I did. I presented them, and I was 8.5 months pregnant when I presented them. So it wasn't the best time to sort of have your first thing on television, is when you're sort of this big. But I had some help. This is my little girl, Elizabeth. She helped me give the Christmas lectures, and she stayed where she was supposed to stay, and it didn't become a biology lesson. It stayed as technology, thankfully. But it was amazing. It was an amazing experience, and it was such a wonderful thing to be able to do, is to communicate my passion for science and engineering to a much wider audience. And it's something that I really, really love doing now. And I think that's what I love about academia, is the difference, the breadth of things. In one day, you can be doing your research, you can do some teaching, I can be doing some leadership roles, you can be doing some outreach activities. They're all massive jobs, but it's great that I for sure get time to do the sort of outreach side of things as well. And so I've managed to do, like I say, I've been very lucky to do some sort of public engagement work. And the downside is you put yourself out there, and it's really hard. I've never had any training to do any, BBC work or documentaries or anything. And I just really like it. I love doing it, and it's really good fun. Never be a huge thing for me, just a small part of my job, but I really enjoy it. But then you get criticism from people. Everyone's an expert, and I'm dumbing down my subject because I'm making it accessible for a non-scientist audience, and certainly children. And I think the hardest thing that I've had to do in my job is to teach, and to teach first-year undergrads. So people say I'm dumbing down my subject sometimes, but actually the hardest thing I've had to do is teach undergrads. It's fine, I can talk to my peers on my research. That's really easy. Try and explain your research to a first-year undergrad, or indeed a primary school child. That's a real challenge. Certainly is for me. Anyway, but I love the challenge of it, and I think talking to that next generation and making sure that they are inspired to do research as well, whatever that research is really important. I spoke to one of my, a daughter of one of my friends a few years ago, and I asked her, I was saying to her, I think it's really important that academics and researchers, we go out into primary schools, into secondary schools, and we talk about what we do, and we talk about it in an accessible way. That's not dumbing it down, that's just making it accessible to everyone. And she was like, yeah, I do. I think that's really important. I was like, why do you think it's important? Because I know why I think it's important, but why do you think it's important? Here's what she said. I don't know if we've got sound or not, but let's see.
When you're ready,
yeah.
I'm you in the future. So, if you help me now, in the future, I can be better than you.
I'm you in the future, so if you help me now, in the future I can be better than you. What a great motivator. I love it. And Abigail could be 9, 19, 29, it really, really doesn't matter. Part of my job, I think, is to make sure that the next generation is better than my generation when it comes to doing research and certainly solving the global grand challenges that we're all facing now as well. So I've tried to do a few things through my career so far, and a lot of them we've already heard, but I just want to sort of pick up on a few. make yourself understood. It's really, really important to communicate really well, and we've heard some excellent communicators here today. Try and tell people about yourself in 5 short sentences and what you do. That's really the key, and I find that really, really difficult to do. I can do it in about 1, but 5. But there are people who do so many different ways of communicating their research. I'm doing a podcast about research communication, and there's a guy who's a criminologist, and he works a lot with men in prison, and especially black men in prison. And a lot of the papers he was writing, he realized the very people they were about were not accessible to those people. The papers were not accessible. So he got in touch with a rap artist who took an 80,000 word thesis and put it into a rap. It's a 12-minute rap about black men in prisons. And now the black men in prisons are able to listen to that work. They would never read an 80,000 word thesis, but they're getting the gist of it from this 12-minute rap. And so being able to communicate, I'm not saying everyone should rap in your work or anything, but it's just that sort of thinking outside the box and find out what works for you as well. Publishing is really, really important, and rejection is very normal, very, very normal. I remember the first paper, was literally the first paper I tried to publish in my sort of postdoc era, and the rejection came, and it came on my birthday, which meant it just felt like the worst thing in the world. It was like the end of the world had happened for me, and I didn't read the sort of it's been rejected. Here's some of the reviewers' comments. You can have a look at the comments and then resubmit. It was just like the worst thing ever. Rejection. That's it. My career is over as a researcher. So publishing is really important, but rejection is very much the normal thing. And I think we just need to build up a resilience to it. And even now, when my PhD students and my postdocs, when their papers are rejected first time sometimes, it's that I still need to build up that resilience as well, to think this is normal. Just remember this is normal. Choose a good mentor, and I've sort of put good in inverted commas because good will mean different to lots of people. Good could be the best person in your field at publishing, and they might live abroad, or it might be the person next door to you in the corridor who's nothing to do with your field, but who would just be a really, really good mentor for you. So choose someone who you would feel is a good mentor, and someone who's just there and got your back no matter what happens. Have a life, for sure have a life. We've heard this several times. Jesus was saying quite a lot of this. It's really, really important. Our research, our careers in academia are very important and a huge part of our life, for sure. And so they should be. But it's not the only thing. You have to have a life. And you have to make sure that you do get weekends to yourself. And yes, sometimes you have to work weekends, sometimes there's a paper deadline or that lab experiment or whatever it is, but if it becomes the norm, then it's wrong. So make sure you do have a life as well. Network. We've just heard about it, and Jesus was saying as well, networking is really, really important for us all, but we have to think about what we mean by networking. That whole canapes and wine and talking and feeling a bit awkward about it all, or not being included because you're not there, is really important. And I think we really do need to open up this dialogue. The people who follow me on Twitter saw a really irate tweet from me a couple of weeks ago. This is it. I was connected remotely to this workshop, and the people didn't know I'd connected. And so they all went off for a coffee break, and then a few of them were sort of stood round and just sort of slagging me off, not bothering to come, and because I couldn't go the extra mile, and they've had to set up this remote connection because I couldn't be bothered to come. And it's that sort of assumption that I wasn't going to network now with all of these people because I wasn't in the room. as well. Now, I had childcare commitments, and I thought I was doing okay by remotely connecting, but clearly my colleagues didn't. I had lots of input from this, and lots and lots of people, especially in academia, have very similar experiences. But I think for me, it highlighted we need to change the dialogue around networking, because it is that sort of, you're networking in the bar in the evening or over canapes and wine during a poster session or whatever it is. That's not right anymore. We should think about different ways of networking, and it's going to be you guys that need to change that dialogue and to change that work culture so that we all benefit from it as well. And finally, plan. But don't worry if you don't have a plan. I never had a plan. I still don't have a plan. I never expected to be an academic at the university. I certainly never expected to give the Christmas lectures or do any of the wonderful things that I do now. So it's great if you do have a plan, like well done you, but don't worry if you don't have a plan as well. Just really enjoy your work, be very, very passionate about your work, and make sure that you're sharing that passion as well, because we are all absolutely individual with this. But we do have lots of things that are common to all of us in this room. And these are the learning habits of mind. I don't know if anyone's come across these or not, but they are, for all researchers, for all academics, they are very, very common learning habits of mind for us all. So, persisting, building up that resilience, the ability to think flexibly, to gather data through all of our senses, and use those sort of natural pathways. I think a really important one for me is finding humour. That's really, really important. And it's something I love to do a lot anyway, is laugh. And it's something that, weirdly, I've been accused of not taking my research seriously enough because I laugh too much. So I laughed at the people who said that to me. But it's funny, this idea that in order to be taken seriously as a researcher, you need to be very serious. And you need to make sure that nobody understands your research, because then you must sound really intelligent. That's rubbish. It's absolute rubbish. Make sure your research is accessible to people and laugh and have fun when you're doing it as well. The other one is taking responsible risks as well. You do need to be adventurous, and you definitely do need to take risks. We've heard earlier about being lucky and or being in the right place, or talking to the right people. Taking risks is very, very important as well. But I think one of the best things we can do, and this is at any stage of our career, is get out of our comfort zone. This is where the magic happens. So if you're sitting in your comfort zone and you're feeling probably quite nice about something, you're probably not in your magic stage. You're probably not innovating in as much ways as you could. So get out of your comfort zone. And that means that you have to fail. And that's good. Fail. And celebrate those failures. They aren't fantastic. We are researchers. We are pushing the very boundaries of our subjects. And in order to do that, you have to fail. And don't just keep that failure to yourself. Tell people that you failed, because it's really, really important for two reasons. Because you're out of your comfort zone, so you're innovating, that's where the magic happens. And also to show people that failing is very much a part, certainly of researchers, but actually just generally of everyday life. And it's a really important message when you're talking to the next generation, to let them know that failing is part of being a researcher, and making sure that we do celebrate those failures. So if I could be as bold as to give you some advice, please do get out of your comfort zones, have fun when you're doing it, and fail along the way. Thank you very much.
One more round of applause for Danielle, everyone.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Yes, as I managed to lose a counsellor, we do have a bit of time for questions. So Danielle, would you be up for a few questions? Any questions, anyone? I can't see any of you. No one? Have we all fallen asleep? They're just like, give us the coffee, Luke. Give us the coffee. Okay, well, thank you very much to Danielle again. And thank you very much to all of our speakers today. Give them a round of applause. Okay, very kindly, the refreshments and things have been prepared a little bit early as we're finishing early. So we just have a couple more things to mention and then you can get to that. I forgot to mention, if you do want more from Danielle, she's all over YouTube. If you give her a Google, you'll find her. She's a Christmas lecture and everything is available. You can find that there. And so just finally, I'd like to hand you over to Inez Hahn, who is one of the team that has made all of this possible. And I shall let her speak now. Thank you very much. See you guys.
Thank you very much, Luke, and thanks to all of you. Yeah, of course, so I'm speaking for the organizational team. So first of all, again, I want to thank all of our amazing speakers today, and of course, Luke, a brilliant compare. So again, a big round of applause for our speakers, please. Yay! Thank you so much. And I want to introduce you to the amazing team that kickstarted this first Manchester Postdoc Appreciation Week, which is just part of an international event happening since 2009 all over the world. It started in USA, but it's happening since 2009. And this year, this amazing team of people, not all of them are on the picture, but most of them, made that happen. So they organized today. And also a couple of other things that are happening during the week. And I just want to thank, all the members of the organizing committee you see up there, people involved that helped us, and also I'd like to especially mention the Research Staff Strategy Group led by Melissa Westwood, who supported us in all of this and made it happen. I was very enthusiastic with their support, and especially Claire Fakney, who's, I think, a rock star and made this all happen and supported us in any way possible. So a big, big round of applause, and thank you to all the people that helped us and basically made that happen. Right, so this is just the beginning of, so it's actually not just Postdoc Appreciation Afternoon, it's Postdoc Appreciation Week, so a whole week of us being appreciated. Then next week we're back to normal, don't worry. Just to let you know of a couple of the other things happening. So in principle, within today and tomorrow in many, many buildings, there's supposed to be thank you cards, printed thank you cards that your PIs and PhD students, we have PhD students here, they all know what, they know how to use them. So basically thank you cards that could be given to you, hopefully they will. We try to make sure that the PIs know about this and the students. Of course, we have, apart from this event, we have 17 more local events in different schools, in different faculties, in different divisions. So hopefully, if you're in one of those divisions, join them, help join those local events as well, because the idea is of us to connect, to create a community, to get together as postdocs, not just to be stuck in our own little small space all the time. So take this chance. The division and schools throwing some money at this, so go and meet people basically. And if you want to know where all those things are happening, it's on our webpage. So this is just an example of the things happening. And yes, please follow us on Twitter. We have a Twitter account, and we will throw out some content across the entire week. And if you attend any of those local events and want to tweet about this event, would be amazing if you could use the hashtag #LovePostdocs, because this is not just us, but we talked to postdocs in London, Belfast, and Liverpool that also organize Postdoc Appreciation Week events. as well as the innate ones, and they will also tweet using the same hashtag. So if you want to make this trend, and if you want to make, get a bit of visibility for postdocs, tweet using that hashtag. It would be amazing. Yeah, and now basically it's time. I hope you stay for a bit of networking. So there's some tea, coffee, and cakes outside, and some music, and some thanks also to the Pine of Manchester Creative Reactions organization. They have a little bit of an exhibition outside you can look at, and we also have a bit of an interactive thing you could do, which is we have little post-its, and we find a space on the wall. You can draw your research, paste it there, and then just basically show that we are very diverse, that we are working on very different things, and just contribute or just create something while we're standing there, listening to lovely music, eating some tea, and hopefully connect. And with this, that's basically now all of it. So thank you very much all for coming. That we didn't stand here alone, which is great. I had nightmares about that. No, don't worry. Thank you all for coming. Happy Postdoc Appreciation Week.